Three Waters is poised to bring significant change to the water industry.
Yep.
As the ex-CEO of Watercare, what challenges do you see in benefits or downsides you see to three water reforms being introduced to New Zealand?
Well, I think we needed reforms to public water supply. Three Waters, and I haven't been involved with the Three Waters at all. Right? Yeah. So I just have to say that because I think I talk about some of the concerns I have first.
Yeah.
I think Three Waters is a nice phrase to use. You know, it's sort of has this connotation that somehow it's a cyclic thing. You know, it's a cycle. Well, it's not. I mean, there are many waters. You know, in fact, Auckland Council was doing its policy a few years ago, and it had 8 waters in it.
Right. Actually, before we go any further, can we give the viewers an understanding of what Three Waters is?
Exactly. So Three Waters is the drinking water.
Yep.
Okay. The sewage, wastewater, that's the bit that you flush, the grey water, black water. And the third water is the stormwater. That's the rainwater that comes down. So this is all going to be put into one entity. And I personally believe that from a service provision point of view, water supply and wastewater services, they are services that you can package up and say, I'm providing you a service. Stormwater is not a service.
It's
right? Stormwater, firstly, you can't package it up.
Yeah.
You know, so when you look at trying to put the functions into like a company or a service organization, water supply is packaged, it's treated, it's put into a pipe, it's pumped or by gravity delivered to your home.
Yep.
You know, it's the most efficient transport system.
Yep.
Right? Available when you want it. You open it, it's there. Similarly, with wastewater, you know, you flush your toilet, you've got a sink, it's packaged, it goes into a pipe, gets pumped to a treatment plant.
Yeah.
Occasionally, both water and wastewater get out of the pipes, and it's our job to make sure it doesn't. Because if water gets out of the pipe, we are wasting it. If sewage gets out of the pipe, then you're polluting the environment. Stormwater cannot be packaged.
Interesting.
It's natural.
Yep.
It's going to rain. It's going to flood people. You can't put it, you can't constrain it. Right? So it is not a service in that respect. So by putting it together into an entity, you're taking away what I believe is a function that local government provides. Right. So local government provides planning and land use controls.
Yeah.
So stormwater is very heavily tied up with land use. So if you and I are neighbors and it's raining, right, and you're above my property, then water from your property is going to flow onto my property.
Naturally,
right? It can be an inconvenience to me, and then you and I could have an issue. We can go to the council, and it's a council function. Try taking that to a company. So I turn it around. Let's assume one of these three water entities was already existing today.
Yep.
And we had all this flooding that we've just had. Muruwai, you know. What is their responsibility?
Councils.
Which bits are council's responsibility?
Yeah.
And which bits would be the water entity's responsibility? Where would you draw the line?
That's an interesting question.
Right?
Yeah.
And I know the legislation is going through, the bill is there, and I've been looking through it. It hasn't really been defined. Right? The only thing that's common, because when I was at Metro Water's responsibility, this is the old Auckland Council's water company.
Yeah.
It looked after water supply and wastewater.
Yeah.
And on contract, it managed stormwater for Auckland City Council.
Right.
Similarly, when Manukau Water Limited was set up, it looked after water supply and wastewater, and on contract, it looked after stormwater for Manukau City. And the stormwater that it looked after was stormwater that was in pipes.
Yeah.
Because stormwater is not always in pipes.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Right? Stormwater flows wherever it wants to.
It's water.
It flows in your backyard.
Yeah.
It flows in gullies. It flows, and we've got
overflow sumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, wherever.
So,
on the road,
on
the side of the
roads,
road.
we got some, so we got transport involved, and most of the water comes out of roading surfaces.
Yeah.
And in Auckland, we've got groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
So Ellerslie, Mount Eden, the other suburbs, they do not have a stormwater system.
They don't?
They don't.
Okay.
It rains.
Yeah.
The water from the roofs and the roads, they go into the scoria,
Yeah.
they disappear.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I had a house in Ellerslie,
Yeah.
which my mum and dad then moved into, still own it. The water just goes into the ground.
Wow.
There's no pipes,
Okay.
right? So if it is a service you're providing, what's the infrastructure for stormwater? So I have lots of questions about that. But then as soon as you put stormwater into the three waters and say you're an entity that will manage water supply, wastewater, and stormwater, that entity has to be given regulatory powers.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And as soon as you give the entity regulatory powers, it's got a service function and it's got a regulatory function. And for me, my thinking, any organization that has both of those is never effective. It struggles with, am I here to regulate or am I here to provide a service?
Yeah.
You know?
So Watercare is predominantly a company that provides service.
Absolutely.
Like you said.
So Watercare has got no regulatory powers.
Yep.
It's a company like any other company. And I think that has been one of the reasons why Watercare has been very successful, because it knows what its purpose is.
Yeah.
And all the regulations it needs is with Auckland Council, its shareholder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the bylaws and everything else is with Auckland Council. And the only challenge Watercare had and still has is the debt constraint that the council has.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons for the whole reform was to separate the balance sheet of the water entity, especially Watercare, from Auckland Council, right? Because Auckland Council owns 100% of Watercare. And if more than 50% is owned by a council or any entity, then you've got to consolidate the balance sheet.
Right.
So if Auckland Council owned less than 50%, it wouldn't have to consolidate Watercare's balance sheet.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be, Watercare wouldn't be constrained by Auckland Council's balance sheet. But currently, Watercare is constrained by Auckland Council's balance sheet. Will the Three Waters reform address that issue? I have a big question mark, especially for Auckland. Does it really? I haven't seen it. Because someone has to guarantee that.
Yeah.
And if it's not the shareholder, is it the government?
Okay. So that's an example of Auckland. What about the rest of New Zealand?
I think the rest of New Zealand, in terms of, so I think the rest of New Zealand, they need the reform as well.
They need the reform?
They don't have scale.
Yep.
Some of the councils are doing very well.
Yeah.
Okay. Some aren't.
Yeah.
They're struggling because of lack of funding. So if we can address the funding issue,
Mm-hmm.
you know, then all of you can have any model.
Mm.
If the model
100%.
allows the entity to have the funding that it needs, then they can perform. So the Three Waters, in my view, still has this concern. I have the concern about stormwater being in it. I think it should just be water supply and wastewater. And I think that, there are too many entities. It needs to be consolidated. They need to be focused on providing water and wastewater services.
So in summary, what we're saying is, it's a great concept.
Yep.
But you can't give an entity service power and regulatory power or functions to perform at the same time.
Yeah, I think, you know, if I looked at the Three Waters reform process, firstly, I think it's too long.
It's too long?
Yeah, it's taken too long.
Yeah, oh yeah. Just like everything in New Zealand.
Yeah, when you restructure something, and I've restructured organizations, it's like a surgery.
Yeah.
It's very disruptive.
Yeah.
People get affected. So surgery needs to be very quick.
Yep. Get in.
Do it quickly, recovery can be long. You know, the planning can be long, but the surgery has to be very quick.
Interesting.
Three Waters has been too long. It's painful. We are losing people from the water industry. People from Watercare have left. I know so many people who've left, which is not good for the water industry. So I would say that the reform should have gone back to why are we doing this? I'm an engineer. I like solving problems. To solve the problem, you need to really define the why.
Yeah.
What is the problem? What are we trying to solve? So separating the balance
That's a good
sheet.
point, though. What are we trying to solve with the reform, with the three waters? What are we trying to solve?
Well, I think the first thing was for Auckland, separating the balance sheet.
Okay, separating the balance sheet. That's a key
You
issue.
separate the balance sheet for Auckland, but if in separating the balance sheet you provide the same model or similar model for rest of New Zealand, then they should have the balance sheet to be able to do the work that they need to do, which is to invest in water and wastewater infrastructure, that they haven't been able to do because they've been part of the councils.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, well, they need to do what needs to be done. You need a regulator. You need a water quality regulator, which we've got.
Yep.
Unlike the old Ministry of Health, which was the regulator but had no teeth. So you need a regulator that has teeth. There are consequences. So we need consequences. So if you do not do what you're supposed to do, you're going to get some consequences. You're going to get fined. You're going to get, something will happen.
Yeah.
So we need separation of balance sheet. We need a regulator.
Yep.
And then I would have said, you just leave the councils and say, the regulator is going to start waving the stick in 3 years' time. Mm-hmm. You've got 3 years to sort yourself out. Do whatever you want to do. That's sort of what they did in the UK. Yeah. They didn't prescribe.
Yeah.
They said, so in UK, if you look at the water companies, they're all different models.
Yeah,
they're
right.
Cooperatives, So defining what they should be, defining how many they should be, that's one way of doing it. Leaving it to the council so that they can choose. Give the locals the choice. But they know that they have to change because there's a regulator now and they've been enabled by being given a model for separating the balance sheet.
Right. So they've been shown what good looks like.
Yeah.
Go get it. You've got 3 years
go
and
get it.
Here's the money to sort it out.
Yeah.
Solve the problem.
Yeah.
Interesting perspective. Yeah.